The SCP Foundation. We all know it. Some love it. Some hate it. Now, I know what you're thinking. Everyone on YouTube has done a boring SCP list at some point in their career, which is essentially just a retelling of every single entry, and while yes, I am technically going to be doing that, and full disclaimer by the way, the video will be more for listening whilst gaming or doing work or whatever, and as such will be a lot less visual heavy, so if that's not your thing, I suggest probably going and watching another one of my stellar videos like this one, or even this one. I think this one's pretty good, but I'm pretty impartial to them. I mean, it's not like I put a lot of time into them or anything like that. For those sticking around, I'm going to be reading SCP entries, but as the title suggests, this time with a twist. I'm reading the SCPs in a random order. Here in this program, I have input a number of 1 to 8,999, as that is the biggest number currently available in the SCP universe. This generator will then pick 50 random entries from either any number between those. I have, before writing this video, already generated said entries, as you can see here now, but before we dive into the video, I want to go over the formatting and important information for those with little to no experience with the SCP Foundation if you somehow have no history of ever looking up the SCP Foundation or watching a video on it. Firstly, on the screen is now an example of how the entries will look. Here in the corner is a picture of the SCP, along with its designated entry number and name if applicable. If there's not one available, a black and white question mark will take its place. Under will be the entry's classification. The main three classifications are Safe, Euclid and Keter, or Keter depending on where you are in the world. Safe, meaning that the entity can be easily and safely contained on its own. Euclid, meaning the anomalies require more effort to contain. And Keter, or Keter, which are classed as exceedingly difficult to contain. Now, this doesn't necessarily mean it's dangerous, but just that it's hard to contain, as is the main goal of the SCP, which stands for Secure, Contain and Protect. There are more specific classifications like Formial, Archon, Ticonderoga, Apollyon, explained, decommissioned, pending, uncontained, and esoteric object classes. However, for the absolute sake of all of our sanity, I'm going to be limiting the classification to just the main three. So, without further yapping or introductions, let's get into our first of 50 entries. SCP-7164 is a Euclid class item that is quite literally the head of Sir Walter Riley. The skull has been removed, replaced by tobacco leaf, with the outer layer of the skin being partially mummified. SCP-7164 is blind but not deaf. Both of its eyes are missing, as well as the external ears, eyelids and lips. All of SCP-7164's hair is fallen out, apart from a few strands. DNA testing has matched its biological material to samples from Sir Walter Riley's living descendants. 7164 speaks in a mixture of modern and Old English, and can accurately recall memories of Sir Walter Riley. As far as it can be historically documented, they are generally passive in their communications and a never initiated conversation. When it is not speaking, 7164 is inert beyond its matter-generative properties. 7164 is constantly spontaneously generating ants, beetles, maggots and earwigs from within its internal tobacco leaves. These are of varying species and are always in their adult form. After emerging from 7164's varying orifices, they would immediately begin attempting to consume the entity, but will otherwise behave normally if removed from the entity's vicinity. Archaeological and mortician personnel are to take appropriate measures at their own discretion to preserve 7164's tissue. A vacuum filter must be running constantly to absorb the insects spawning from 7164. When not in testing, 7164 is to be kept in a climate-controlled storage unit. Regular conversations to prevent the degradation of 7164's mental health can be assigned to junior researchers at the discretion of supervising personnel. SCP-416 is an oblong area of forest located in the northern redacted area. It displays remarkable spatial anomalies, the most notable of which is that once entered, it is impossible to leave on foot. The only personnel to escape the area inside 416 were extracted by an aerial reconnaissance team. Though from the air 416 appears identical to the surrounding forests, it displays a bewildering array of plant life. Species as varied as the Joshua trees, grand-eyed as baobab, Wollamy pine and manchineel trees have been observed. No explanation has been offered as to how these species arrived and propagated. All observations indicate that 416 is entirely devoid of animal, fungal or insect life. Personnel deployed inside 416 report that the entire area is continually overcast with fog, despite satellite evidence to the contrary. On a redacted date, local geographic surveyors reported a sudden seismic event coming from the area known as 416. The Foundation was alerted after the surveyors reported anomalous topological features. D-class personnel, or prisoners, were fitted with GPS trackers and tasked with walking across the entire area of 416. Though the subjects reported that they maintained a constant speed, their movement speed relative to the area outside 416 slowed dramatically as the subjects ventured further in. The deployed personnel were unable to reach the epicenter of the seismic event. The subjects reported no indication of backtracking on their part. It appears that 416 may be infinite in area to observers located within it. The D-class personnel, forced to endure prolonged stays inside 416, have developed a wide array of mental instabilities, ranging from depression and post-traumatic stress disorder to catatonia, hallucinations and psychosis. 416 is being considered as a storage location for several movable, safe and Euclid-level SCPs, specifically redacted. Owing to its anomalous topographic structure and the danger it poses to civilians, it is essential that 416 be sequestered from the public. Though 416's true colours have yet to be exactly mapped, SCP Overwatch has, in cooperation with the redacted government, restricted foot access and instituted a no-fly zone within 5 kilometers from the boundaries measured by the initial observation team. If you're wondering why I'm smoking a cigar now, it's because we've got a long way to go, and why the hell not? SCP-164 is... Wow, how the hell did you do that? Actually, a better question is, who the hell are you? Oh, I'm Charlie, or at least the OC created by him. Who are you? I'm Fat Man. Why are you here again? Remind me. I'm not sure, actually. I'm kind of lost. One minute I was doing something with Raccoon City, and then there was a black wall, and I just kind of punched it, and, well, now I'm here, apparently, so... Say, what's going on here, anyway? I'm covering some SCP entries for a video. Should we maybe address the fact that the fabric of reality has been broken behind you somehow? Nah, I'm sure it'll fix itself. See? Good as new. Right. Is there someone I can call for you, or... Nah, I'm sure Yo, wait! Hold on, is that SCP-164? I fucking love 164. Can I do this one? Please, 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 please. I guess? At least it gives me time to finish this cigar. Wait, what? I have so many questions. Why do you sound like me? Oh, that's because Charlie is too fucking cheap and lazy to hire a voice actor. SCP-164 is a strain of cancerous cells that causes sarcoma-like tumours in host bodies. While cell DNA appears to be primarily derived from human DNA, the cells now effectively exist as unicellular, asexually reproducing parasites. Several characteristics make 164 remarkable. 164 is the only parasitic transmittable cancer known to infect human beings. Strains are transmittable through, in order of infectiousness, blood contact, sexual intercourse, skin contact, and airborne contact. Chemotherapy and surgery are effective in treating the disease in nearly all stages. Tumours produced by 164 that grow larger than a certain size will, in 75% of cases, follow normal behaviour for cancerous sarcomas. However, in 25% of cases, hostile bodily materials will be utilised for the creation of a new, separate organism inside the tumour. In the case of multiple tumours, some or all may follow this behaviour. Said organisms will apparently begin as zygotes, fertilised ova, and replicate, much like fetuses. Externally, this appears no different from normal tumour production, and may go unnoticed in initial stages. Oddly, mature organisms identify as being completely unrelated to the original tumours, corresponding with a previously unknown species of order, Chufida, or squids. Removal of organisms shows they are entirely viable in marine conditions and will perform normal actions such as locomotion, catching food, basic defense, reproduction, etc. However, said organisms will also remain entirely viable in the original tumor, rarely moving or shifting position, continuing to grow at a regular rate until the host is killed. The existence and nature of the organisms is often not realized in civilian cases until biopsy or surgery reveals the developed organism. 164 organisms and tumors may interact with the host's physiology in interesting ways. The following cases are particularly notable. Female D-class, 23 years old, 164 tumors spawned on uterus walls. Host body apparently recognized the tumor as a human fetus and was delivered normally, containing viable 164 specimen after 9 months. Male D-class, 30 years old, tumors spawned on the spinal cord, disrupting the central nervous system. As a result, movement from 164 would occasionally cause the subject's limbs to flail, suggesting a cross-wiring of the nervous systems of the two organisms. A biopsy lent support to this hypothesis. Male D-class, 25 years old, tumors spawned near the esophagus and windpipe of the subject, in a location that with ordinary growth would normally have blocked off said passages and quickly killed the subject. Instead, the growth of the tumor shifted to the back of the neck, preventing the subject from dying before the normal point. Cultures of 164 should be contained using standard Class 3 biohazardous procedures, and stored clearly marked with a refrigerated biocontainment unit at 10 degrees Celsius. While pathogenic, SCP-164 is not highly infectious. While researchers working with raw cultures or infected subjects should use caution, latex gloves and face masks are generally effective at preventing the spread of the disease. Any personnel inadvertently infected will be subject to 6 months of chemotherapy upon first showing symptoms, and surgery as necessary. SCP-1610-1 is a series of humanoid individuals. All subjects are anatomically identical to humans, but exhibit no signs of sentience or sapience. Each instance is marked with one of 4 possible symbols somewhere on its body. As such, instances have been divided up into subgroups by symbol, designated as SCP-1610-A through SCP-1610-D, respectively. All subjects within a certain subgroup are identical. See Table 1610-Beta for greater detail about each subgroup. 1610-2 is a currently unidentified anomalous liquid. 1610-2's anomalous properties activate only when either a human being or an instance of 1610-1 is completely immersed in a sample of the liquid. If a human is immersed, then the liquid will render the subject comatose and disable higher brain functions for an unknown means for approximately 30 minutes. It will then create 6 instances of 1610-1 that are identical to the human immersed. During this process, the subject's vital functions are kept in a suspension by an unknown process, and will exit 1610-2 unchanged after the process is complete. If an instance of 1610-1 is immersed, 1610-2 will dissolve the subject and manifest an undamaged instance of 1610-1 identical to the one previously dissolved. 1610-1's anomalous properties manifest when an instance of 1610-1 experiences physical damage. If the damage done would be non-lethal to a human of similar size, then it is repaired at a rapid rate. If the damage would be lethal to a human of similar size, then the 1610 individual vocalizes loudly and repeatedly until fully immersed in 1610-2. Vocalizations seem to vary between subgroups, with each subgroup having different set of phrases. All instances of 1610-1 are to be kept in cryogenic containment at Site-23. All samples of 1610-2 should be kept in a receptacle measuring approximately 2 meters in diameter and 3 meters in height. Testing with 1610-1 should be kept to a minimum, if possible. All instances of 1610-1 created by the Foundation are to be incinerated at the end of testing. SCP-7321 is a male humanoid corpse measuring roughly 2 meters in height. While its rate of decay is typical for that of a cadaver, this putrefaction seemingly occurs in reverse. To clarify, as time goes on, 7321's state of decomposition decreases, as the corpse becomes more fresh. Given the rate of this process, it is currently hypothesized that 7321 will fully regenerate by the year 2000. Whether or not 7321 is capable of restoring life functions is unknown at this time. So far as the History Department has been able to gather, 7321 has been in Standard Anomalous Corpse Locker 400M0040852 ever since Site 400's mortuary's construction in 1922. The mortuary's construction workers discovered the corpse on the site when it first broke ground, but chose to ignore it. After the concrete of the basement foundation had cured, they found it again on top of that. After the wooden subflooring was constructed over this foundation, they found it again on top of the subflooring. Nobody claimed responsibility for moving it. At last, it ended up in the storage locker, where an unwitting mortuary assistant later discovered it. SCP-3697 is an anomalous toll-free telephone service accessed at the telephone number 169069 redacted. Approximately 78% of individuals who call this number connected to a recording of the song Never Gonna Give You Up by Rick Astley, followed by a synthesized voice reading a web address leading to a HTML file. When this number is called by certain individuals who display sexually abusive or exploitative behavior, 3697's anomalous features manifest. When called by an individual displaying the previously mentioned profile, 3697 will feature a deep voice with a Brooklyn accent, seemingly taking the role of a telephone operator, designated 3697A. 3697A's speech is highly repetitive and non-responsive to the caller's speech, indicating that it is an audio recording or other non-sapient construct. 3697A will begin with a set of dialogue with minimal variation, followed by a unique audio file designated 3697B. The audio files played on 3697 range from 2 seconds to 2 hours and 38 minutes long, and are typically recordings of non-sexual activities edited to trigger an autonomous sensory meridian response, ASMR, in the listener. The initial caller, even if they have not previously shown any response to similar audio, will express high levels of pleasure while listening to this audio file. Following the completion of the audio file, a 3-second long tone will play, followed by 3697 hanging up. After exposure to 3697B, individuals immediately undergo a number of behavioral changes. The individuals demonstrate a complete absence of libido, as well as any interest in or enjoyment of sexual intercourse of any kind. Additionally, they display increased interest in or enjoyment of sexual intercourse of any kind. Additionally, they will display increased interest in the activity recorded in 3697B, and derive pleasure from performing the activity directly. The affected individuals do not show any desire to involve others in this activity, and typically will not be aware that their behavior is changed or unusual unless it is pointed out to them. 3697 is to be monitored in order to prevent the spread of public awareness. Any callers are to be detained, interviewed about how they became aware of 3697, and administered amnestics. Any public or online displays of 3697's number are to be erased or monitored. SCP-4857 is a strange entry. When opening the SCP page for it, you'll be met with this. It's not until you open a classified, quotation marks classified, document below you'll get an actual description. 4857 is a designation of an observed phenomena regarding human interaction which may only take one of two forms, designated Model Blue and Model Red. Currently, 4857 is considered to be non-dangerous. However, it is likely this may change if it is found to correspond with the Model Red hypothesis. The phenomena designated 4857 can be described as a closed-loop system of relations. Every human being on the planet is familiar with the number of others, which may vary from under a dozen in the case of extremely reclusive individuals to the mid-hundreds with more outgoing ones. The individuals are in turn familiar with other individuals, creating a network of billions who are all connected through many degrees of separation. Although conventional wisdom and general logic would dictate that the entire population in the world would be connected in this way, investigation by the Foundation's Dr. Malska have determined that this is not true. Starting from Dr. Malska, the network of individuals and their connections only extends to approximately 2.6 billion people, before being entirely prevented from continuing via a comprehensive structural holes, which separate it entirely from the rest of humanity. The 2.6 billion people, which includes the entirety of the MTF AWAS-1 and every potential reader of this document, therefore has no connection via familiarity to the rest of the world's population. The group of 2.6 billion people has been termed the in-group by members of MTF-1, with the converse therefore being the out-group. A few additional factors must also be noted. All countries contain both in-group and out-group members. The distribution of in-group members is consistent with general trends of global population distribution. No centrality is observed at all within the in-group beyond that expected, such as the inhibited by especially wealthy or famous individuals. No settlement beyond 1,000 people is comprised entirely of members of one group. The ratio between groups remains fixed as the global population changes according to the NIES free census. Many famous individuals, both historical and current, are out-group members as per the standard distribution. It is possible for in-group and out-group members to meet and even communicate, but they never do so regularly. Nothing approaching familiarity has been observed between the groups. Nobody in the in-group can identify a member of the out-group. Group distribution is maintained within the Foundation itself. The chances of 4857 occurring naturally are so small as to be functionally impossible. This would suggest one of the two models of behavior. Model Blue posts that 4857 is a phenomenon of random chance with no external controller or other anomalous features. Per Model Blue, 4857 most likely cannot be breached by forcible random selection of outgroup members, as this would have occurred by chance, since the discovery of 4857 in 1983. Awareness of 4857 has also not facilitated chance intergroup connections amongst members of MTF-1. Other interaction and chance-related SCP objects known to members MTF-1 have previously been diffused by knowledge of their nature. This has not occurred with SCP-4857. Model Red posts that 4857 is instead the product of large-scale control or secondary anomalous property. As by definition, census and other data closely observed by members of the in-group will only include members of the in-group. The existence, number and location of outgroup members cannot be determined. As no member of the outgroup can be identified or contacted at this time, there is no guarantee that any member of the outgroup exists when not observed by a member of the in-group. If the outgroup members do possess a shared permanency and are not observational dependent, then it is considered extremely likely that a large controlling intelligence coordinates the outgroup in order to facilitate the extremely slim chances involved in maintaining 4857. Regardless of the correct behavior model for 4857, it is considered likely that the breaching 4857 would be an extremely difficult act and may be impossible. Although this means contact with the outgroup members may not be feasible, it also suggests that accidental breaches of data to the outgroup are unlikely to occur. This means that provided 4857 is not intentionally breached, and a minimum of informational secrecy is maintained, 4857 should remain extant, and the intelligence controlling it, if that intelligence exists, should remain unaware of the existence of MTF-1. The AMB, or the Ambishek-Malska breaching proposal, also known as Prop 4857 breach, is a proposed series of steps which would conclusively prove whether or not 4857 adheres to the blue or red behavioral models, and was submitted to the MTF-1 on the 1st of the 6th, 2003. The AMB proposal both outlines specific details of the steps to be undertaken if approved and a broad plan of actions for MTF-1. The AMB proposal is chiefly centered around the idea that a Model Blue SCP-4857 will not physically allow a breach between the in and out groups, and that in the case of Model Red being accurate, the termination of outgroup members is not a moral concern. The AMB proposal therefore suggests that the MTF-1 attempt to perform a large-scale termination of multiple outgroup dominant population centers in order to reduce the outgroup population advantage. Terminated outgroup members will then be inspected by MTF-1 members in order to achieve familiarity and create a forced bridge between the in and out groups. Suggested methods of termination include thermonuclear attacks, induced natural disasters such as large-scale flooding or tsunamis, release of chemical agents, release of biological agents, release of SCP objects. Prior to the enacting of the AMB proposal, prominent in-group figures will be informed in order to prevent additional loss of life due to civil unrest. Proponents of the A and B proposal have stated in the past that it does not matter if outgroup members die, so long as the breach is performed and they are demonstrated to adhere to Model Red. If no breach can be performed, then that demonstrates that Model Blue is correct, and in this case the A and B proposal will not be capable of proceeding at all. Criticisms of the A and B proposal are focused around the point that it is unknown if Model Blue will prevent a breach being formed, that it is unknown if Blue will intervene before the large-scale termination is performed, and not afterwards during the forced familiarity stage, that too little is known about the hypothetical Model Red outgroup to justify a large-scale termination, and that the A and B proposal will necessitate a broken veil scenario. As of the most recent vote, MTF-1 has elected to not attempt to forcibly breach 4857, with a vote of 63% saying no, 34% saying yes, and 3% abstaining from the vote. A breach attempt will therefore not be made in accordance with Proposition 4857 breach. So, that was probably real hard to understand. I mean, even for me it was hard, so I went around looking for answers, and I actually found a pretty damn good Reddit post that kind of like summarizes it up. So hopefully this will help explain what 4857 is in a bit more layman's terms, if you will. Imagine if there was an entire subset of humanity that nobody you knew, or anyone they knew had a meaningful contact with whatsoever. All of this social ties linking us together suddenly and inexplicably end in an impenetrable wall, beyond which exists the majority of humanity. How could such a thing happen? It seems completely implausible given the highly interconnected nature of human social systems in the information age, yet in this article it is true, and these probably people make up 2/3 of the human population. What are their goals? Assuming someone or something is responsible for this, what could they possibly want? What if we're the anomalous ones? How could we ever know? What do we even do? The scariest part is that there is an entire Foundation site staffed entirely by these people, and nobody in the so-called in-group, or us, has the faintest idea who they are. We're not even sure if they exist when not being observed. Forcing contact with them is likely to either be fundamentally impossible, or if possible, will alert whatever intelligence or anomalous phenomenon is controlling them that we're aware of their activities. In the end, we have what could be either a very bad problem, or nothing more than an extremely bizarre coincidence, and no real way of safely finding out which one it is. We can only sit, wait, and ponder on the implications. 8178 is unfortunately the first of, I'm sure, many SCPs on this list that don't yet exist or have been removed, so unfortunately I'll have to spin the wheel. SCP-189 is a species of parasitic roundworm. Bear with me here while I try and get this first try. Tentative taxonomic classification, data expunged, capable of infesting any mammalian life form. Infection most commonly occurs as a result of direct skin contact with one or more of the egg sacs. These egg sacs are covered with microscopic hooks similar to those on the cuticles of some species of nematode, which anchor the sacs to the skin's surface. Contact with the sebum then prompts the eggs inside the hatch, at which time the larvae seek out and burrow into one or more nearby hair follicles. Once inside the follicle, the larva attaches itself at the base of the papilla and begins feeding off the capillaries supplying the papilla. Over the course of 2 to 3 days, the larva grows larger and develops into an adult. When it is fully matured, the new adult detaches from the papilla, severs the hair fiber from the root, and almost fully envelops the papilla and hair matrix. From this point forward, the worm feeds on the cells shed by the hair matrix, which would normally form the hair fiber, and begins to grow longer. Adult 189 specimens grow only in length, extruding a tail which incorporates some of the pigments and keratin from the cells they consume into an outer cuticle. This, combined with the fact that the diameter of a specimen's tail is usually similar to that of the hair that would normally grow from the host follicle, causes 189 to be visibly indistinguishable from a normal hair. except under microscopic inspection. However, some specimens will occasionally flex, coil or uncoil and or lash to their tail, particularly in response to tactile stimulation. The reason for this behaviour is not currently understood, nor is why only some individuals behave in this fashion, though it has been proposed that data are expunged. As with other many species of roundworms, 189 is hermaphroditic, with both sets of genitalia contained in the head, the proportion enveloping the papilla and hair matrix. Fertilized eggs are produced in groups of 1 to 3 and enveloped in a protective egg sac, which is then incorporated into the growing tail. Egg sacs grow their microscopic hooks, and the eggs typically mature by the time the portion of the tail containing them has extended approximately 1 mm beyond the surface of the host skin. Once fully developed, the egg sac passes to the exterior of the organism's tail, becoming loosely embedded in its cuticle. At this point, if the egg sac is brought into contact with a suitable host surface, including the skin from the current host, it attaches to this surface and is pulled free from its parent. This is the primary method 189 uses to both infect new hosts and to further infest the current host. The tail of an adult specimen of 189 is no more durable than normal hair, and its head no more strongly attached to the host follicle. The tail can be cut or broken, or the entire organism pulled off, by any method that would similarly affect hair. Severed sections of an adult's tail could grow a new head and regenerate into a separate individual, but only if they attach to a suitable host. The death of a follicle infested by an adult 189, or any other event that would cause the loss of that follicle's hair, causes the individual to detach from its host. Without a host, 189 will die within 1 to 6 hours. Mature eggs can remain viable up to redacted years after the death of their parent, and as such, even dead adults can present a risk of infection. When an infected host dies, any surviving adult specimens of 189 continue to feed and grow, eventually burrowing into the host's tissues. Once decay begins, however, the specimen is killed by the toxins produced. Samples of 189 are to be stored in cryocontainment facility redacted, with any surplus destroyed by incineration. Test subjects infected with 189 are to be kept in a sealed containment chamber with an airlock that includes a chemical shower. Personnel interacting with test subjects must wear standard NBC hazard suits throughout their time inside the containment chamber, and submit to a chemical shower before exiting the airlock on their way out. When test subjects expire or are terminated, their remains must be sealed in an airtight container or body bag, which is subjected to the same chemical shower as the personnel carrying it out of the containment chamber, and disposed of by incineration. Staff members found to be infested with 189 are to be quarantined according to the procedure outlined above for test subjects, and treated with anti-parasitic agent 189A. If 189 infestation is discovered on any individual animal at the facility, all personnel and animal at the facility are to be inspected for the presence of 189, as detailed in Procedure 189. Any staff members treated as described above, any D-class and or non-SCP animals terminated and incinerated, and the facility subject to a thorough cleaning with anti-parasitic agent 189A. Should any cases of 189 infestation be confirmed in persons or animals outside the Foundation, all those affected are to be immediately taken into custody and quarantined. Animals should be euthanized and incinerated, while humans are to be treated with the anti-parasitic agent for the infestation, then administered Class C or B amnestics. Any individuals who may have been in close contact with the infectees and or entered their personal vehicle or place of residence should be checked for 189 infestation and treated if necessary. Refer to document 189 for suitable cover stories. SCP-5216 is a hardcover cookbook titled Even More Good Eats. The number of pages, and by extension the number of recipes it contains, varies depending on the proximity of the book to items that can be conceivably ingested by humans, regardless of whether they are safe for consumption. Every time 5216 is observed for the first time, new recipes are noted to appear. At the time of writing, no single recipe has been recorded more than once. Most dishes prepared accordingly to the recipes of 5216 inhibit minor anomalous properties, warranting their designation as 5216-1 instances, and can be safely consumed with little to no ill side effects. Subjects following the recipes exhibit advanced culinary skills and occasionally anomalous abilities. during preparation, regardless of whether the subject had had any culinary instruction. Attempts to replicate 5216-1 instances using transcribed recipes have failed. Additionally, 5216 and or 5216-1 instances are suspected to possess a certain degree of compulsive effects on nearby individuals to complete and consume the dishes. 5216 is stored in a standard storage locker. Access is restricted to personnel with level 3 clearance or above. Personnel conducting tests with SCP-5216 are to transcribe any relevant information to a non-anomalous medium. Tests involving the synthesis or consumption of 5216-2 instances are restricted to personnel with level 3 clearance or above and require application forms to be submitted to head researcher Dr. Shida for approval. SCP-5616 is Dr. Elise Reinders, Senior Researcher in Achromatic, Batman and Archives and Revision at Site-43. She is trapped in the Anomalous Documents Disposal Chamber, in the AAF, due to an oversaturation of counter-chronological material, which has partially infused her being. The most obvious effect of this infusion is that she does not physically age. Furthermore, 5616 does not require nutrition, hydration, rest, urination, defecation, or any attention to personal hygiene. For all intents and purposes, her body is locked to one precise moment in December of 1943. Any alteration she makes to her personal appearance or physical coherence will revert within 1 minute. Her mind and motor control are unaffected by this phenomena. 5616 can move, speak, think, learn, and feel emotion as would a baseline human being. 5616 has spent her years in containment pursuing multiple courses of scientific inquiry, and is by a significant margin the most learned individual at Site-43. 5616 is presently 129 years of age, but physically appears to be approximately 30. 5616 is confined to the Decommissioned Anomalous Documents Disposal Chamber, ADDC, at Site-43. The chamber must remain sealed and its structural integrity monitored at all times. 5616 is permitted to interact with any and all items located within the ADDC. 5616 may request reading material. This is to be presented via the ADDC exterior window. 5616 must experience human contact via the ADDC exterior window for a period no less than 10 minutes per day. The duty should be cycled between all willing personnel. 5616 must undergo 1 hour of psychological counselling per day. Reading material may now be projected onto the ADDC exterior window at 5616's request. Camera surveillance of 5616 must be maintained at all times. Should 5616 attempt self-harm, qualified personnel from the psychology and parapsychology section must be summoned to the ADDC exterior window immediately. 5616 security level 3 credentials have been restored. 5616's database file must henceforth cease the use of neuter pronouns in reference to her. 5616 is permitted to remotely lecture Foundation personnel once per week. 5616 is to be provided with a voice-activated computer terminal permanently mounted to the face of the ADDC exterior window. 5616 must experience human contact via the ADDC exterior window for a period not less than 1 hour per day. This duty should be cycled between all willing personnel. 5616 must undergo 2 hours of psychological counselling per day. 5616 must be permitted to remotely participate in all team building and recreational activities at Site-43 at her discretion. Oh, hey, you're back. Yeah, but sorry, I kind of fell asleep on the couch over there. Sorry, how's the video coming along? I kind of forgot that I was doing that. Oh, it's fine, I love doing this stuff. But I should probably, start finding my way out of here. No offense, but this place is a bit bare, to say the least. Hey, don't rag on my universe, man. Sorry. Anyway, it was nice meeting you. Wait, where are you gonna go? I mean, look around you, there's nothing here. I don't know. I mean, that direction looks good, right? I think I'll start there. I mean, how long is it going to take me, honestly? I mean, See, I mean, look, over here, this is what I mean. I mean, there's a hole over here. I mean, how bad can that be? Right. SCP-1631 is a phenomenon that causes crystalline flower-like growths, designated SCP-16311, to appear on certain grave markers in the country of Denmark. SCP-16311 instances have a composition identical to their substrate, being composed of granite, marble, or other materials commonly used in tombstones, despite their abnormal coloration. In all observed cases, SCP-16311 instances have been shown to only affect the grave markers of children, primarily those ranging from infancy to approximately 15 years old. 1631 was first discovered in 1989 after a family relative reported the cherub marker of their nephew Runar Helgason as having been vandalized, with several odd structures attached to it. Due to the context of the apparent crime, it received nationwide attention, necessitating the use of a Foundation contingency 3B6 scapegoating. When the structures were examined more closely and their anomalous nature was confirmed. Since their discovery and subsequent classification, SCP-1631 appears to be declining over time, theorizing to be in response to the long-term downward trend of infant mortality. The instigating force behind the anomalous phenomena remains unknown. 16311 instances are to be removed from grave markers using industrial-grade saw blades. During removal periods, the corresponding locations are to be closed to the public under the explanation of ongoing renovations. Preemptive civilian discoverers of SCP-1631 are to be amnestised. At the time of its original discovery and classification, 1631 had an estimated occurrence rate of approximately every 3 to 4 weeks. 1631 events appear to be growing less frequent over time, with the inactivity period in between events lengthening to approximately 1.5 to 2 months. If the current rate of decline persists, 1631 will functionally cease, and should be reclassed as neutralized by late December of next year. Further containment procedures have been deemed unnecessary. SCP-5656 is a species of extraterrestrial organism that exhibits extreme thematic sensitivity. 213 discrete instances have been observed since their initial discovery in 1995, when the additional mass of an attached instance significantly distorted the trajectory of a GPS IIR satellite. Mature 5656 instances measure approximately 10 meters long, and are morphologically similar to the Medusa phase Medusozoans, consisting of one central bell that trails an assortment of tentacles and fringes. These appendages are specialized for a number of functions, including delicate manipulation of physical objects, secretion of exotic substances, and interference with electrical equipment. 5656 instances attached to artificial satellites in geostationary and high Earth orbits, following periods of intermittent drifting on solar winds. Once attached, they absorb orbital debris and collect gases vented for satellite altitude adjustments to replenish internal mineral reserves. 5656 instances disconnect from host satellites after approximately 2.4 years of sustained habitation, leaving behind genetic material that is employed in future reproductive cycles. All known 5656 instances are currently incorporated into the OKMGLOS Full Spectrum Surveillance Network. This was accomplished following the implementation of technologies derived from Project Deepwater Downwell, as well as direct communication conducted under the auspices of the Overseer Council. Current OKMGLOS capabilities enable triangulation of any terrestrial entity emitting a formatic signature, encompassing 100% of their baseline human population and large portions of active anomalous entities. Replacement satellites for all global navigation systems are to be primed for 5656 cultivation prior to launch through the installation of beacon equipment and additional gas dispersion canisters. Satellite trajectories are to be altered through subburned control stations to account for additional mass in order to suppress inquiries and maintain constellation integrity. Ongoing engagement with 5656 as a whole shall proceed according to updated charter stipulations. SCP-1194 consists of two parts, SCP-11941 and SCP-11942. 11941 is a small device, roughly 3 cm by 1 cm by 4 cm, consisting of a speaker attached to a pull string. and a plastic case. Analysis of the speaker, however, shows it to have at some point been rendered inactive, despite the remainder of mechanisms still being functional. Upon being protracted, the string will slowly retract to its original length at a rate proportional to the length removed. When a female subject pulls the string until an additional 3 cm is exposed, 1194 is activated, causing the manifestation of a 11942 instance. Particle retraction or retraction by a male subject does not have this effect. 11942 is an organism, largely similar in physiology and morphology to an adult member of Equus ferus calibus, with an average height of 139 cm. Upon the activation of 1194, 11942 will appear on the nearest suitable flat surface, provided such a space is present within 30 meters of the device, otherwise activation will fail to occur. Instances have displayed various sizes, breeds, and both sexes, and are notable for various biological irregularities, including the presence of beta-cyanis, pararosaniline, and other pigments not usually found in mammals on their coats, typically causing a mild purple or pink coloration. Specimens do not synthesize or otherwise produce these chemicals, causing the coloration to fade over time. The death of an SCP-11942 specimen, that of the relevant 11942T subject, or the string of 11941 being pulled during an active state, will cause the current instance of 1194 to disappear. Should the lattermost situation occur, a new specimen will appear provided the conditions for this occurring are met. Upon disappearing, the volume previously occupied by the specimen will be replaced by a gas consistent in composition and density with standard tropospheric air. Specimens of 11942 behave in a manner normal for a horse of their estimated age, typically between 4 to 5 years old, except in 3, at the time of writing, known cases. Firstly, specimens are effectively incapable of vocalization. Examination has revealed no direct cause of this, as no features of relevant tissue or mouthparts seem to function in a preventative manner. Experimentation involving the placement of specimens in situations which would cause distress has failed to provoke any vocal reaction, despite successfully doing so in the case of normal horses. Specimens do not excrete feces or urine, despite intaking and digesting food normally. Specimens do, however, maintain a relatively constant mass if well fed, and will lose mass if not provided with food. How this is regulated is not currently known. Extended lack of contact with their relevant 11942T subject has invariably resulted in several severe symptoms occurring in 11942 specimens, usually becoming noticeable after 4 days without physical contact, and substantially affecting behavior after 7 to 8. This has, in all known cases, followed the same progression. Heart rate first decreasing at a constant rate, followed by the symptoms of prolonged nutrient deprivation, and the specimen behaving in a way consistent with that of horses experiencing illness and starvation. Death will occur at 14 days. The exact cause of this is not known, due to the disappearance experienced by 11942 upon dying. The unusual pigments present within the coat of specimens will regularly, once every 3 to 12 months, be replaced with green cadmium dye, eventually causing acute poisoning from absorption over several days. This process is gradual, marked by a decrease in the intensity of the previous coloration as the former pigment reduces in concentration while the cadmium increases, and typically takes 2 to 3 days to complete. While this is rarely fatal, the symptoms typically associated with the exposure to the toxin manifested by the time the dye's concentration stops increasing. Continued exposure to 11942T appears to lessen the severity of these symptoms, and the substance will disappear from the body of the specimens over the course of several minutes, under a week after initially appearing. When this occurs, the pigment previously removed will return, often to the concentration process during the initial manifestation of the specimen. In all instances of this occurrence, specimens have made a full recovery, with provision of appropriate treatment. 11941 was originally recovered from a house in Redacted, England, after an automated search of local police files regarding the suicide of one Redacted. The remains of a ceramic and plastic casing resembling a generic horse of no discernible breed, apparently broken by extreme fall damage, were also found within a meter of the object. Said casing's interior displayed similarity to that of toys designed to accommodate pull-string speakers. Approximately 20% of the casing could not be located, and standard post-acquisition protocol was later completed. Extensive analysis has demonstrated a consistent structural abnormality in the vocal folds of 11942 specimens. Research is ongoing. SCP-11941 is to be kept in a secure storage locker in Research Sector 12 when not in use. Deactivation of 1194 is to be initiated through the termination of the active 11942-T subject, or, if more convenient, the 11942 instance. Testing Chamber 13A, a standard humanoid containment unit, and 13B, modified to serve as a stable, are to be maintained for the purposes of experimentation involving 1194. Please see Document 1194-C for extensive information on standard testing procedure. SCP-773 is a standard English-style dartboard with a diameter of 451mm. It is divided into the standard 20 segments and an inner and outer bullseye ring, along with the standard double and triple bands. 773 was acquired by Agent Redacted from a Mr. Redacted of Gloucestershire, England residence, after an anomalous police report came to the attention of the Foundation. Mr. Redacted was found dead in his home, with several ruptured blood vessels and a heart attack which proved fatal. Police were unable to identify any cause of death. After investigation into the death by Agent Redacted, it was discovered that the dartboard in his study had been acquired from the organisation known as Marshall, Carter and Dark Limited recently, after wiring a large sum of money to the organisation 3 weeks prior. Upon recovery of the object, a set of instructions were recovered from a panel in the rear of the board, which also contained a set of diamond-tipped darts with a small space to insert small strips of paper. The instructions were handwritten and signed by a Mr. Redacted. According to the instructions, when a dart is thrown onto the board from a distance of at least 3 meters, and the name of a person is written upon the dart, it will cause harmful injury to that person, depending on where the dart impacts on the board. The higher number on the board, the more severe the injury, ranging from a simple sprain of the elbow to a complete rupture of the aorta. The instructions explicitly state that the person must be written clearly on the dart, and that the rules are observed, or the detrimental effect will occur to the thrower. This effect occurs in triplicate according to the standard British Dart Organisation rules, before another person can be selected by another person to be injured. Double and triple bands incur ill effects based upon the base score that they multiply. Other significant experimentation, all of these effects have been confirmed by Foundation staff using Class D personnel. It was also discovered that it would not affect any person more than 30 meters from the board itself. After significant experimentation and the use of mechanical throwing arm, the segments of the dartboard have produced the following injuries: slight finger pain in the right hand, an immediate tension to the shoulder muscles, a minor headache, a slight rash on the left ankle, treatable with most normal anti-rash over-the-counter creams, a strain of the tendons in the right knee, ingrown toenails for several months, data expunged, slight swelling of the left hand, a fever for several days, treatments are ineffective at breaking it, rupturing of the blood vessels in the sinuses leading to heavy bleeding from the nose, rupturing of a blood vessel in the upper chest, strain of the Achilles tendon, laceration of the esophagus, herniated disc, dislocation of the right shoulder, a portion of the lung becomes punctured with a rib, cranial swelling, a fracture of the tibia, a compound fracture of cranium, a non-fatal aneurysm, a fatal heart attack, a coughing fit leading to the rupture of membrane in the throat. SCP-773 requires no special containment procedures at this time and is to be held at site redacted in secure storage until further notice. SCP-4071 is a phenomenon in which previously unrecorded events simultaneously appear in a large number of various forms of documentation. These include, but are not limited to, journal articles, news reports, documentaries, some fiction, and textbooks. SCP-4071-X refers to each unrecorded event. 4071-2XX refers to each piece of documentation affected. The Foundation became aware of this situation due to a sudden exponential increase in reports of documentation not supported by human memory. Further examination has found that the number of previously unrecorded events have suddenly appeared in various forms of documentation. Based on the type of information appearing in documentation, It is the Foundation's belief that this anomaly is being directed by an individual or group of people attempting to increase global tension. As a result, groups such as the Chaos Insurgency, the Organization for the Reclamation of Islamic Artifacts, and the Imperial Japanese Anomalous Matters Examination Agency are to be investigated. Foundation web crawlers are to monitor the internet for reports of inconsistencies between documented events and human memories. Any documentation determined to be an SCP-40712 instance is to be immediately removed from circulation. Depending on the extent of the presence of 40711 in each SCP-40712 instance and how widely spread it has been, a new copy of the documentation with content of 40711 instances may be created to replace the 40712 instances. SCP-5530 is a species of marram grass, which grows on an uninhabited island 2 miles north of North-East Outer Headbridges. The anomalous properties of 5530 manifest when a strand is cut or broken and then gifted to an individual or a family group. 5530 will manifest the specific sentiments of the picker towards the recipient as envisaged at the time of picking. This effect will then continue until the 5530 instance is destroyed. Given the often innocuous nature of 5530, the number of active instances is unknown. Based on historic records, knowledge of 5530's properties was locally commonplace until the early 20th century. More recently, the practice has been continued as a tradition, with older stories being passed on as folklore rather than factual accounts. 5530 was still used to make charms until the mid-1990s, at which point grazing activity on the island made it more difficult to find strands suitable for weaving. Modern non-anomalous charms of a similar design are now constructed using marram grass harvested from other islands or from non-traditional materials. The island of which 5530 grows is to be monitored for regrowth. Should 5530 grow to a height of 5 centimeters, the island is to be mowed and the clippings incinerated. The belief that 5530's anomalous properties are folklore is to be actively encouraged. Any evidence to the contrary is to be destroyed or discredited as appropriate. Given the nature of existing 5530 instances, no further action has been deemed necessary at this time. This is to be reassessed on a case-by-case basis if new instances become known. SCP-3468 is a metallic road sign located southwest of Fort McMurray, Alberta, Canada. 3468's front contains a half circle segmented into 4 separate quadrants, marked from left to right as low, moderate, high, and extreme. The front of the sign appears to be facing the entrance path to the Two Horn Trails Park. Upon first inspection, 3468 is visibly indistinguishable from other wildlife warning signs in the Fort McMurray area. Following detailed analysis of 3468 and its components, it was discovered that instead of the plastic pointer that similar wildlife warning signs in the area use, 3468's pointer was replaced with a replica pointer of a wooden construction. The replica pointer shows no visible variation from any similar wildlife warning signs. When the pointer on 3468 is moved to any quadrant not marked as moderate, the environment in a 10-kilometer radius around 3468 will begin to alter itself to match the marking to which the pointer is now pointing. 3468, when placed on the low and high setting, will result in average temperature and weather patterns in 3468's area of effect matching regional April and August respectively. When replaced on moderate, 3468 will cease all anomalous activity and enter a docile state. Temperatures inside of 3468's area of effect will attain no abnormal weather patterns during this time. When 3468's pointer is placed on the extreme quadrant, a similar series of changes as to the high settings take place. When the effective climax of the environmental change is in place, a small fire of a light green coloration will begin directly below 3468 and continue to burn rapidly in the dry and hot conditions. The flame, known as 34681, reacts similarly to a standard flame, except when in contact with any living organism. After contact with a living organism is made, 34681 will begin to consume it until no living matter remains on said organism. 34681 is capable of fully consuming the human body in approximately redacted seconds. 34681 cannot be extinguished when inside of 3468 area of effect by any known means. If left uncontained, 34681 is capable of spreading beyond the 10 km area of effect and continuing to burn and travel outwards and away from 3468. After 34681 leaves 3468's 10 km area of effect, the flame will lose its unique coloration and anomalous abilities. Wildfires created by 3468 will only stop when all available fuel resources inside of 3468's area of effect are destroyed. Testing has been inconclusive as to if 34681 is sentient. 3468 shows a full immunity to heat and fire damage with the ability to withstand temperatures beyond the point of melting steel while retaining no damage to any of its components or paint. 3468 is inactive between the months of December, January and February, and all changes of the positioning of 3468's pointer create no environmental changes. Investigation of the Department of Fire Safety in Redacted revealed that 3468 was originally placed in the current position in Redacted. 3468 has only ever been maintained once, with the problem being cited as vandalism, missing pointer. The name of the individual sent to repair 3468 is not listed on any form of government documentation. Cross-analysis with known anomalous individuals and groups is currently underway. SCP-3468 was ordered to be relocated to Site-45 for active testing away from the general public. However, with Agent Redacted, killed in action, attempted to remove 3468 from its fixed position, 3468 began to vibrate rapidly before exploding into a ball of fire with the approximate temperature of 1200 degrees Celsius. 3468 then began to rapidly pump superheated steam out of its post, which began to push outwards towards the 10 km limit of 3468 radius of effect and into Foundation research camps nearby. This repeated for 12 hours before 3468 returned to its docile state, leading to redacted casualties and redacted confirmed dead. For the full casualty list, view Incident Report 3468 Redacted. Attempts to remove via robots or mechanical methods have been so far met with failure due to the inability of Foundation machinery to operate under such high temperatures. Over the course of the last 2 months, we've been able to break down the events leading up to the Fort McMurray wildfires and discovered an individual we suspect is responsible for the maintenance of and possible anomalous properties of 3468. Below, I've attached 3 interviews from individuals who have had close connections to 3468 and its origins, and I suspect we're not dealing with any rogue individual, but a violent radical eco-terrorist group. 3468 is surrounded by a chain link fence that is exactly 10 kilometers in circumference and covers the entire perimeter of 3468's area of effect. The fence line is to be constructed exclusively of tantalum carbide and hafnium carbide in order to assure stability when under scorching temperatures. The entire perimeter of the fence line is to be patrolled in its entirety by a minimum of 3 members of security every 2 hours. Under no circumstances are any non-Foundation personnel allowed to enter the 10 km area of effect beyond the fence line. 3468 is to remain on the moderate setting at all times when not in active testing. When in active testing, security is to be placed on standby with rapid response teams readied and equipped with fire prevention equipment. All SCP Foundation personnel are required to wear fire retardant suits during active testing and are only permitted to remove them when further than 15 kilometers away from 3468. Any non-Foundation personnel attempting to enter 3468's enclosure are to be turned away under the premises of cleanup of the Fort McMurray wildfire. If any non-personal individuals continue to persist, they should be detained and questioned. SCP-1661 consists of a swarm of self-replicating automata, composed primarily of aircraft components, assembled in a random and seemingly non-functional manner. Although general arrangement and internal workings are highly variable between instances, each specimen contains a single, genetically cephalopodic eye of varying size in its approximate center. All SCP-1661 are capable of self-directed flight through unknown means, and possess an aptitude for swift, coordinated maneuverability. While 1661 displays some degree of sapience, attempts at communication have been ineffective. Individual instances are highly specialized for a variety of purposes relating to the seizure and deconstruction of airborne crafts, such as planes, drones, helicopters, and unnamed spacecraft. Laser cutters, multi-fingered appendages, and primitive cloaking devices have all been observed. 1661 prefers to hunt collectively at night, attacking their target mid-flight. They are capable of completely deconstructing unmanned aircrafts and aerial drones in a matter of minutes. In all recorded cases, they were successful in reducing such craft into scrap throughout free fall, and before the craft could impact the ground. They generally limit themselves to removing non-vital components in manned crafts, presumably to allow the survival of passengers. Experimentation has revealed that in these cases, 1661 are more cautious and precise with their work, taking as long as an hour to carefully exercise specific material. 1661 has shown no response to prey items other than airborne devices. 1661 activity was first brought to Foundation attention in 1948, following several reports of aircraft losing small exterior sections of their wings or fuselage. Some passengers aboard affected flights claimed they witnessed small metallic objects moving about the plane's exterior, thus prompting further investigation. A fictionalized account of these sightings were later disseminated to the public by Agent Matheson in accordance with Operation Saga. Investigation into the projected human hunting grounds of 1661 was fruitful. Several attacks on dummy planes were witnessed by field agents over the following decade, allowing researchers to eventually triangulate their location of their nest. Containment specialists were deployed to the abandoned Albert Johnson Air Base in Indiana's Tippecanoe Country in April of 1969. Personnel discovered over 300 SCP-1661 in the process of configuring salvaged material into new instances. The majority were able to escape through collapsed sections of ceiling in the complex upon sighting agents, who were successful in capturing several specimens for study. 47 inactive instances were also recorded, each of which did not possess their characteristic eye, hosting only open orbits within their central mass. It is notable that 2 instances were responsible for the rescue of an Agent Fielding, who had nearly fallen into a fissure in the foundation of the facility. They were both then captured. 3 days after containment at Site 81, a swarm of 1661 descended within the site's exclusion zone, landing 5 meters from the main gates. These instances did not resist collection by personnel. 1661 specimens are to be contained within Site 51, crossed out, Site 81. Dissection and experimentation requests are to be filed through personnel with Level 3 clearance. SCP-4466 are quadrupedal mammals, possessing features similar to that of several other known animals. SCP-4466 possesses anatomy unable to have naturally occurred, and have DNA that appears to be composed of the DNA of several other organisms. An abridged list of notable aspects of SCP-4466's anatomy follows: sparse hair, human-like eyes and mouth, cow-like digestive system and nose, a face structure similar in construction to a dog's snout, a bone and muscle structure in the legs more reminiscent of hominid fingers, a collection of stacked and compressed toenails used for balance in the place of feet. SCP-4466 are herbivores, domesticated, usually ambicile towards human subjects, and docile unless provoked. Initial exposure to 4466 invariably causes confusion, discomfort, and a mild headache in human subjects. The rate of which these symptoms fade is variable, but consistent exposure over the course of a week has shown to be effective in over 95% of cases. The remaining 5% of subjects who continue to be affected are disproportionately composed of those who have had experience in medical fields, especially veterinary practices. 4466 were discovered in rural areas redacted after several reported sightings of unusual beasts in the area. 4466 population was found to be centered around an abandoned farm, previously occupied by a redacted family of a mother, father, and 3 sons. The current whereabouts of the redacteds are unknown. After investigation of the redacted household revealed several photographs of the family posing with 4466 instances and or riding them. Similarly, a camera found within the house contained a video of the father teaching the eldest son how to ride 4466 instances. The equipment used to ride 4466 as shown in the photographs and video was not found. Most notable was a recovered HD DVD that acted as an educational miniseries on 4466. The disc was labelled The Dangers of Misunderstanding Your Steed, with the subtitled 1974 Remastered 1992 in permanent marker. Subjects who view the contents of the DVD may re-experience the initial symptoms of 4466's exposure, even if they had previously overcome them. The disc is currently held in a secure storage locker in Site Redacted and has been recorded into the digital database as well. Below is an abridged transcription of its contents. The disc is collectively an hour and 15 minutes long, over 3 episodes and 3 extra features. SCP-4466 are to be kept in an earthly containment chamber, fit for several large 152cm tall and 244cm long mammals to roam. SCP-4466 are to be fed primarily grass and hay 3 times a day. 4466 are to be groomed, cleaned, and generally maintained by on-site animal handlers. The 4466 population is to be kept at a reasonable level decided at the research lead's discretion, and decreased instances are to be dissected and studied. SCP-8435 is an anomaly complex affecting the Esoteric Assembly, a defunct collective of thaumaturges and scholars of the anomalous. The Assembly was founded in 1849 and rendered effectively inoperative in 1868 due to internal political conflicts. Several of its members went on to be involved in the formation of the SCP Foundation, while many others founded or joined other anomalous groups. The other legislative chamber of the Esoteric Assembly is an extra-dimensional space accessible through numerous different ways. The primary point of ingress, however, is a house in Lexington, Kentucky, originally belonging to Leopold de Haas, one of the founders of the Assembly and its inaugural chair. De Haas, aided by some of his colleagues, imbued the Assembly building with a complex and expansive system of thaumaturgic wards and protections, here referred to as SCP-8435, tasked with maintaining order in the Assembly. The practical effect of SCP-8435 is as follows. It is impossible for the Assembly's constitution, known as the Principatus, or its standing rules to be violated. For example, members speaking out of turn in the Assembly chair, example, speaking when not called out by the chair, engaging in personalities, or invoking curses, certain entities' true names, or other phrases whose utterance might bring about dangerous magical effects are made inaudible. Office doors can be opened by the office's owner without a key, but are locked shut to everyone else. Individuals ineligible for membership in the Assembly are incapable of entering the premises. Works of thaumaturgy intended to bypass, block, or destroy 8345 will fail. The effect has persisted even after the organization's collapse. It will respect amendments to the Assembly's standing rules, so long as amendments do not violate the Principatus. However, the Principatus mandates the existence of 8435. Describes no process for the dissolution of the Assembly, describes no process for its amendment. 8435 is therefore effectively permanent, as the entrenched laws of the Assembly require it to actively prevent it from its removal. When rule violations occur that cannot be straightforwardly prevented, 8435 will act in an erratic and sometimes dangerous fashion, including by manipulating the Assembly building's layout or the exits their form. Occasionally, it may also exert limit and unpredictable influence on the outside world. The current containment procedure are intended to prevent this from occurring. Throughout much of the 19th century, there were discussions of formalizing the worldwide thaumaturgic community and the numerous groups therein into a single unified organization. Many efforts were made to this end. The most successful was in the late 1840s when Dutch-American thaumaturge Leopold de Haas and a number of his acquaintances established the Esoteric Assembly. De Haas wrote, "The occultists, the thaumaturges, the practitioners and scholars of magic today occupy a strange position. They constitute a group, in principle, possessing power in quantities unknown, indeed unimagined by the rest of society, and yet the exercise of this power toward any end is spoken of only in theoretical terms, and checks on such power even more there so. There have been 5 occult wards in recorded histories. Should there be a 6th? Should the performers of these arts ally against each other with sufficient members and motives? It is not hard to see how open hostilities would quickly infect general society like a plague, perhaps leading to a collapse of the entire world order. It is evident that this community, such as it is, must be unified in its goals and its methods. The establishment of governing authority over affairs of an esoteric nature is needed, and needed with urgency. Magic has been proliferating around the world for several decades now. The powers vested in us as occultists must be exercised in service of humanity, not in the service of an endless spiral of fury and destruction. The Esoteric Assembly was established in November 1849 with the initial agreement of 58 signatories. The concept of a magical governing authority was immediately met with a mix of skepticism, as it is feasibly, and indignation at its apparent imposition on the world, both based on the general notion that thaumaturges are not typically inclined towards large-scale collaboration or adherence to legal structures. De Haas attempted to address the criticism by creating what he termed the De Haas legislative warding system. The first stage of this plan, conducted over much of 1849 and 1850, was the construction of 8435, a complex system of magical effects seeded into the entire assembly building, with the purpose of upholding the authority's internal standards while taking on some of its menial administrative and archival duties. In De Haas's words, "A law is by nature only worth as much as its enforcement," and many occultists have an active disregard for the law, even insofar as that a number of national governments have no awareness that we exist. We seek to solve this by making the law, at least, of the esoteric assembly, practically impossible to bend or break. It will not be only legally binding, but physically binding also. The two terms will be one and the same. The second phase would have expanded 8435's area of effect to the entire Earth, and bounded all resolutions passed by the Assembly rather than just its internal rules. No major work on this project was ever completed, and it likely would be impossible under the known laws of thaumaturgy. Believe me, there's a lot more lore to unravel, so I suggest you should go and check this out yourself if this has interested you in any way. I mean, the idea of a magic council is kind of cool to me, actually, in the SCP universe. But seriously, there's a lot more that I haven't gone through that you should genuinely check out if this has interested you in any way. Hey.
Hey.
SCP-402 is an irregularly shaped solid weighing 4 kilograms. While 402 is composed largely of obsidian, trace amounts of platinum and iridium are present. 402's structure has numerous abnormal microscopic gaps similar to those found in SCP-148. This, along with 402's anomalous density, 22.2 grams centimeters squared, roughly 8.5 times that of obsidian, suggests that the two materials operate under similar principles. Any water that comes in contact with 402, hereby called SCP-402-A, develops antiemetic properties, effectively rendering it imperceptible by any direct means. Witnesses typically interpret this as SCP-402 absorbing the water. 402-A can be detected through its interaction of other materials, which occurs normally. For example, the dissolution of salt in 402-A presents as the disappearance of the salt. Scales and thermometers to detect 402-A's weight and temperature respectively can be read normally. Items that float in water will appear to levitate when placed in SCP-402-A. Water rendered imperceptible by 402 can transfer its effects to other water. For every unit of 402-A that is introduced to a body of water, an adjacent 11,000 units are similarly affected. This is perceived as the rapid, spontaneous disappearance of the affected water. 402-A does not present any risk of a chain reaction. However, due to natural currents, 402 itself can create large amounts of antiemetic water very quickly when submerged, particularly in moving water. Consumption of 402-A presents a serious choking hazard, as its presence in the trachea does not trigger the laryngospasm responsible for sealing the airway. 402-A's presence in the lungs is only detected via the resultant oxygen deprivation, and it's typically mistaken for other medical conditions, which prevents proper treatment. Safe handling of 402-A can only be performed by a trained professional. 402-1 is a human, roughly 35 years of age, that was in possession of 402 at time of recovery in redacted Indonesia, as well as a plastic jug containing 4 liters of 402-A. 402-1 has refused to cooperate or communicate with Foundation personnel and has not been identified. Prior to containment, 402-1 would consume 402-A to the exclusion of all other liquids, resulting in the illusion that it did not possess any bodily fluids and giving it a desiccated appearance. This was initially mistaken for a property of 402-1 itself, with the true nature of its condition and the anomalous nature of 402 only being identified after careful observation. 4021's appearance returned to normal as 402A was flushed from its system. 4021's blood, when composed of 402A, possesses cognitohazardous effects when consumed in any quantity. Subjects will become convinced that any other water they encounter is an exertion of an effectively infinite subterranean body of water, in which they risk being trapped should they come into contact with the water. This results in severe aquaphobia as well as fear of being drowned that persists even if the situations where no water is present. Testing the anomalous properties of 4021's blood has been deemed cost ineffective. As such, information on its effects have largely been garnered from 4021's pre-containment activities. Several subjects who had previously consumed 4021's blood displayed a strong fear response when exposed to 109 and 812, though none were able to justify their reactions. Further testing is under consideration. 402 is kept in a climate-controlled storage locker at Site 41. All known 402A and all water affected by it are kept in a climate-controlled freezer at Site 401, with each sample wrapped in barricaded tape to prevent accidents. 402 and 402A must be kept away from all water, including water vapor, outside of testing. Substantial quantities of 402A may exist outside of containment. All unusual drowning or suffocation deaths must be investigated for possible 402 involvement. Mobile Task Force Tau 4, Water Everywhere, is tasked with performing all testing investigations and retrieval missions associated with 402. 4021 is kept in a Type 2 humanoid containment cell at Site 59. Hey, so you know how I fell down that hole? Yeah? Well, I kinda accidentally created a crazy interdimensional portal that's, kind of spewing out all sorts of shit. Like, I got this fez, so, that's pretty cool, right? So, what does that mean? Hell if I know. But I probably wouldn't stick around here much longer than you need to. What does that mean? Is this place gonna be destroyed, or...? Honestly, dude, I know as much as you. I just have a fez now. I'm going to start heading off the other way from that hole. I'll let you know if I find a way out. Okay, whatever. SCP-7423 was part of a Foundation-run experiment to test the success of recreating the American culture following the activation of SCP-2000. 7423 specifically focused on reproducing the anomalous events in Kirk Longwood High School in May of the original 1976 AD. The event was chosen as a plethora of anomalies with unknown origins centered on the final class of high school of the music shop Syncope Sympathy appeared in the original 1976 and the following years of the ADK class anomalous destabilization scenario. While the exact events could not be reproduced, the experiment resulted in the creation of SCP-7423-1, designated 1423. 7423 was therefore tentatively deemed a success. 7423-1 is a Polaroid photograph that, when held by a human subject, will enhance memories of the subject's last high school summer vacation to the point of bypassing amnestic treatment. The back of 74231 shows the written message, "We've had a great year, haven't we?" 7423 project is completed. It requires no further containment. 74231 is to be contained per the containment procedures of 1423. SCP-5525 is the ruins and remains of a city constructed approximately 6,000 years ago by a species of alternative hominids, provisionally classified as Homo sapiens aquarius, codename designation Aquarian Disco. Aquarian Disco possessed a heavily insular but scientifically advanced civilization, with technologies far beyond the current human state of the art. One or more items of paratechnology employed by Aquarian Disco is known to be responsible for the destruction of their civilization and the transportation of 5525 to the bottom of the Atlantic Ocean. Despite its current location, large sections of the structure remain airtight and capable of supporting human life. Further information about the culture and technology of Aquarian Disco is classified L55525. In 1944, 5525 was discovered by the submarine USS Dragonet during its initial shakedown cruise. At the time, the sailors aboard Dragonet mistakenly recorded the structure as a natural underwater feature in the ship's log. Later examination of the submarine's logs by naval intelligence officers uncovered inconsistencies between reported observations and recorded data, which prompted a mission to examine the area more closely using a surface trawler. Sonar readings taken by this trawler revealed the extent of 5525 and confirmed that it was not a natural structure. Further operations involving 5525 were thereupon transferred to the Department of Defense Paranautical Warfare Command, and all information regarding the structure was classified. The Pentagram performed a number of surveys on 5525s in the period between 1944 and 1963. Although no attempts were made to explore the interior of the structure owing to its depth, in 1963 an attempt was made to rescue 5525 by USS Fresher, resulting in the loss of the submarine with all of its crew. After this, no further attempts were made to explore 5525 until 1979. In 1979, the Pentagram took ownership of the DSRV-3 Merlin, a deep-sea submersible outfitted with numerous paratechnologies that would allow it to operate safely and secretly at extreme depths, including that of 5525. Following initial operations, where it was used to excavate several wrecks from the 7th Occult War, Merlin was retasked to use for its exploring of 5525. Merlin succeeded in reaching the structure and gaining access, whereupon the Pentagram began a major archaeological operation aimed at finding and recovering any remaining functional artifacts. Based on what is known of Aquarian disco technology, any objects recovered by the Pentagram would likely be considered Formial-class artifacts if possessed by the Foundation. The Foundation and the Global Occult Coalition became aware of 5525 and the Pentagram's activities following the destruction of St. Jeremiah, which resulted from the inadvertent activation of Aquarian disco artifact during an attempt to remove it from the structure. In simultaneous emergency sessions, the Overseer Council and the Council of 108 both agreed on the necessity of preventing further access to 5525 and the desirability of recovering the artifacts that had already been removed for it. Working through the channels provided by Article 13 of the Coln Agreement, the Foundation and the GOC quickly established a set of joint containment protocols, with the Foundation taking responsibility for the blockade of 5525. Nearby naval assets were immediately retasked to perform initial containment, while a dedicated task force was assembled. While some of these artifacts may have been lost or destroyed, it is believed that they are currently in the custody of the Pentagram. Efforts are ongoing to locate and recover these missing artifacts. On the 30th of December 1979, after the survey team was dispatched and while the containment zone was still established, elements of the US 13th Fleet began to approach 5525. After repeated directives to turn back were ignored, the situation escalated into a full-scale naval engagement. For the next 2 days, the US government, through the Unusual Incidents Unit, continued to communicate with the Foundation and the GOC via regular channels, while ignoring inquiries about the incident. No change in American strategic posture was observed, although the Foundation raised its own alert levels at all North American sites in preparation for a possible counterattack. On the 1st of the 1st, 1980, President James Carter issued a communication to the Foundation and the Global Occult Coalition apologizing for incident inside baseball and disavowing the existence of the 13th Fleet. No mention was or has since ever been made of the destruction of St. Jeremiah, nor of the artifacts removed from 5525. SCP-7857 is an unidentified organization possessing a 50,000 square meter facility adjacent to Barso Badalev. All known entrances throughout 7857 are identified to be triple locked at all times. 7857 employs an undefined number of personnel designated 78572, formerly thought to be 250,000. 78572 instances assume the appearance of a humanoid entity, either male or female of unknown descent. 78572 instances are deemed non-anomalous. 78572 instances deploy 78573 instances indiscriminately. 78573 is a colossal Zeppelin-like aircraft constructed by 78572 instances. 78573 is constructed of mostly titanium and seems to not utilize mechanisms or fuel. 78572 instances deploy at least 3 instances of 78573 every week. In the event of the designated 78573 instance reaching its destination, the subject is mandated to continuously release A4 papers. The aforementioned A4 papers contain extremely concealed information about a specific individual that 78572 instances have designated. MTF MU03 highest bidders were deployed to Barso Badalav on August 2nd. Subjects discovered an unsecured hatch behind the facility, which had led to vents. Agent Michael and Agent Sakurai saw a Caucasian humanoid entity holding a meeting in an undefined room. The aforementioned entity was deemed as the CEO of 7857. Efforts have been made to hold the CEO captive, however the CEO seems to not always be in proximity of 7857. Its reasons for absence is unknown. The area 78572 instances reside in are deemed highly secure. Due to this, the containment of 78572 and 78573 has been deemed impossible. However, due to the lack of signs of threat against humanity, containment may not be necessary. Highest bidders are to visit Barso Badalav every week. Designated personnel are not to remain in proximity of 7857 for no longer than 25 minutes under any circumstances. SCP-1323 denotes both an anomalous region of space that can only be accessed from one of 4 access points located in the British counties of Redacted, and the event that occurs within this region. The interior of 1323 resembles a large open field with permanently cloudy or overcast skies. Traveling in any direction will result in a return to the main activity space. Each access point is active for 7 to 12 consecutive days at some point during the months of October and November. Only one access point is active at any given time. Each access point is located no more than 1.5 kilometers from the closest 2952 terminal. Located in this field is a fairground, consisting of an exhibition hall, a livestock pavilion, and a sideshow. Interspersed throughout the fairgrounds are a variety of information and ticket kiosks, food stalls, and wandering entertainers. All buildings appear to be made of heavily weathered and cracked granite blocks, and non-permanent structures such as game stalls are typically constructed of aged wood, threadbare cloth, and lightly corroded non-ferrous metals. The exhibition hall contains a large array of entries into various judging competitions. All entries are homemade, and categories have included quilts, jams and jellies, photography, swords and daggers, gemstone statuary, watercolor paintings, embroidery and musical instruments. The top 3 winners in each category will have a leather sack appear within their primary residence, coinciding with the deactivation of the applicable access point. Each sack contains 13 coins, comprised of pure metal, weighing 1 pound each, with the first place winner receiving gold coins, the second place winner receiving silver coins, and the third place winner receiving copper coins. Entrants in any category receive free passes to 1323 and are allowed to access the employee restricted areas. Surveillance recorded from D-Class personnel reveal that the restricted area appears to be underground, with earthen walls and ceilings. Although entrants are generally confined to larger rooms, D-Class have previously been able to access other areas which appear to be a complex system of passageways whose layout is topologically inconsistent. Fairground employees can occasionally be seen moving through these passages, although they will uniformly escort non-employees back to the original chamber if seen. The livestock pavilion is separated into quarters, each containing a different category of animal. These are bovines, equines, canines, and porcines. In addition to the judge competitions for the best example of each animal category, there are irregular exhibition demonstrations involving the animals, such as trick riding, obstacle courses, and death matches. The sideshow consists of a variety of games, rides, and attractions. These include standard attractions such as ring toss, bombing for apples, skee ball, carousels, Ferris wheels, and mirror mazes, as well as anomalous attractions such as shooting ranges, freak shows, and guess your weight booths. Participation in any of these requires from 1 to 15 tickets. The food stalls sell typical fair food, such as rotisserie poultry legs, deep-fried sweets, ice cream, snack cakes, chocolate sandwich, cookies, and ambrosia have all previously been identified, candy floss, caramel apples, beer, and lemonade. Prices range from 5 to 10 tickets. Approximately 17% of all patrons known to have ingested these foodstuffs fail to leave 1323 before the local access point deactivates, and have been later identified as fair employees. The information kiosks provide maps of the fairgrounds, program schedules, and sell the tickets that are used throughout the fair. Ticket prices are consistent across appearances of 1323 and consist of the following: 1 ticket, a joyful laugh and a sorrowful tear; 5 tickets, a cherished memory; 10 tickets, a year and a day; 25 tickets, a lost love; 100 tickets, a favour. Civilians and Personnel Foundation who purchase tickets will display a variety of mental, emotional and behavioural abnormalities for up to 7 years, and frequently report a compulsion or sense of foreboding if they are prevented from following any unusual or abnormal impulses during that time. Fairground employees are all dressed in clothing and costumes consistent with styles from the early 20th century. The behaviour and terminology of these employees is strongly reminiscent of stereotypical carnival barkers from the same time period. Only 37% of employees appear to be human, while the remainder are anomalous humanoids. Their morphology varies considerably from individual to individual, including heights ranging from approximately 75 to 215 centimeters, skin tones including pure white, various shades of blue and green and dark brown, and exaggerated or non-standard placement of facial features. All attempts to interview employees or interact with them in any way other than part of their duties are rebuffed with suggestions to take it up with management. No member of management has ever been located despite repeated requests from interviews and exploration of restricted areas. Any aggressive action taken towards the employees, other patrons, fairground structures, or contest entries result in the rapid reappearance of large muscular entities eject the offending individual from the active access point. Individuals so injected are unable to enter any access point in the future and typically display minor cosmetic changes such as unnatural skin pigmentation changes, rapid cartilage growth on the face and head, and increased body hair growth rate. These cosmetic changes are permanent and will rapidly restore themselves if surgically corrected. Due to the overlapping time frames that SCP-1323 and 2523 can be accessed, as well as the demeanours of the respected proprietors, a connection has been hypothesized. Inquiries regarding 2523 have resulted in the aforementioned larvish entities appearing and demanding a cessation of this line of questioning. Failure to comply has resulted in permanent ejection similar to the threatening fairground staff. Baseline containment of access points to 1323 consists of passive monitoring of nearby communities in order to identify solicitations for contributions to 1323's contests. Solicitations typically appear approximately 7 to 10 weeks prior to access points activation in the form of large parchment or vellum notices glued onto the sides of various buildings. Once a solicitation has been identified, D-class with relevant skills are to be selected and provided appropriate materials to create an entry for each competition. Entries are to be delivered to the access point immediately once they have been completed, and no less than 10 days prior to the activation of the access point. What the hell is that? Is that money? It is. That's money. What the fuck? Yeah. Maybe I could just keep a little bit of this multiversal cash, just for safekeeping. I'm sure nobody will notice. That's gonna be fine. SCP-855 is the designation given to the lecture hall Redacted located at Site Redacted. 855 is equipped to seat 100 personnel. One reinforced skylight is present on the ceiling to allow the entry of natural light. Each month, 855 will redecorate itself and temporarily develop anomalous properties, seemingly themed after genres of films. This continues for the entirety of the month and has taken the form of manifestation of entities, mind-altering effects, hallucinations. 4 members of security are to be present outside 855's location at all times. No staff are to enter 855 during horror, surreal, action, science fiction, or disaster phases. Any entities attempting to leave 855 during the horror phase are to be dispatched by security staff. Any personnel entering 855 during its western phase are to be monitored by security staff for signs of aggression. During all other phases, research staff are free to enter and monitor 855 as they please. SCP-1633 is a computer game created by the now defunct independent game studio Redacted. The copy in Foundation possession is a beta version of the game. The core gameplay is relatively complete, but there are numerous incomplete aspects. Certain art assets are missing, and there are various graphical issues. The music is either missing or just placeholder music, and so forth. As this version of the game was compiled 2 days before the Foundation raided the redacted offices on Redacted, it is presumed this is the most complete version of the game in existence. The source of the anomalous properties of the game, as well as a major selling point in the game's pre-release advertising, are its so-called tactical heuristic algorithms. After a player saves their game and quits, a background process will begin running on the player's computer. When the process completes, either a new file is created in the same folder as the player's saved game with the file extension PTD, or an existing PTD file is updated. When a player loads an existing save game with an associated PTD file, enemies in the game will be more intelligent and effective, with the increase approximately proportionate to the total amount of time spent playing. Initially, this will result in a more challenging game experience, with the enemies adapting to a player's preferred weapons, strategies, and overall playstyle. However, given enough time, enemies will become aware of the existence of the player and begin to attack him or her rather than the characters in the game. Typical progression is as follows. 0 to 2 hours, enemies lack even basic strategic intelligence and will charge the player character regardless of weapon equipped, environment, or the presence of cover, etc. 2 to 5 hours, enemies begin adapting their tactics to the environment and the weapons they carry. For example, enemies with short-range weapons will attempt to move closer to the player character before attacking, and engagements at long range they will seek cover. At this stage, enemies are roughly equal in skill to an untrained civilian. 5 to 8 hours, enemies begin to counter an individual player's preferred strategies. For example, they will attack a player who uses long-range weaponry from cover with grenades or splash damage weapons to force them out into the open. They will use environmental features offensively and defensively, for instance, laying traps at choke points or setting up ambushes in killbox zones. At this stage, enemies are roughly equal in skill to a trained human soldier. 8 to 12 hours, and enemies begin using tactics which affect the player instead of the characters. At some point, enemies seem to become aware that the player characters are being controlled by an outside intelligence, and adjust their strategies accordingly. Rather than attacking the player characters, enemies may instead position themselves to block the player's view. Enemies have been seen acting in a glitched manner, repeatedly walking into walls, performing the same actions again and again, freezing in place, etc., waiting until the player dismisses them as a threat, then attacking. In one play session, enemies used multiple day flash spells in every engagement, varying the pattern and timing each time. Eventually, they developed a strobing pattern, which was highly disorientating to the player and ultimately caused her to suffer a great malseizure. 12 hours plus. Enemies begin attacking the player psychologically. Specific modes of attack have varied widely, as the game tailors its attacks to each player's psychological makeup. Facing a player who micromanages characters with a fine degree of control, enemies used attacks which did little or no damage but caused the player's character to become dazed, a state which temporarily disrupts player control. However, rather than attack the dazed characters, enemies simply surrounded them in a crowd, continually using daze attacks to prevent the player from doing anything. The subsequent near-total loss of control had a noticeable effect on the player's ability to focus. In another example, enemies kidnapped one of the player characters and quickly dragged them off screen. Later in the level, the player discovered the corpse of the character on a makeshift altar, being continually attacked by a group of enemies. This had no further effect, apart from a continual blood spatter graphic being applied to the room's floor and walls, but visually disturbing for the player. One copy of 1633 is to be stored on a standard DVD-ROM in a secure storage locker in Site 15, along with all supporting documentation and ancillary materials. Individuals wishing to run tests on 1633 must submit a request in writing to the head researcher, Dr. Berger. Testing will only be conducted with on-site computers, which meet all requirements laid out in the document 1633HS01. These computers may be used for extending testing periods up to 6 months, but the hard drive must be wiped and all components destroyed at the conclusion of testing. No individual save file may be played beyond the end of Act 3 in the storyline without special authorization from Dr. Berger. Prior to the point, the save game and accompanying PTD file must be erased. What? No, see, you've just said the same thing again, and I still can't understand you. Oh, fuck this.
Hey, watch it, asswipe.
Ah, see, there you go. Now, little black box that I'm not questioning because, frankly, I'm too sick and tired of guest characters just popping up into this dimension to give a shit anymore. How can I help you?
Do you know where I am?
N-O.
Well, fat lot of fucking help you are, useless yank.
I'm from England, but okay. Look, man, I barely even know where I am. I mean, the last thing I saw here was a fucking walking fish and some fat guy in a white shirt walking to a hole, and now all sorts of shit's coming out. So, yeah, don't fucking start on me, man. I don't even know where we are.
Well, thanks for nothing, dick.
What an ass! Oh, fuck. How many more of these fucking SCPs do I need to do? Oh my... why did I pick 50 of all fucking... The artifact designated SCP-34901 is a large granite tombstone approximately 400 years old. The primary inscription reads Nicholas Flamel, followed by the dates 1376 to 1606. Underneath these inscriptions, there lies the legend, "You have failed," in large capital letters. The tombstone is damaged and partially eroded, with several large cracks evident across its face. It was reported by Agent Redacted, an amateur genealogist, in a cemetery plot near Bath, England, on Redacted. 349 is a cemetery located within a desolate forest clearing 3 kilometers away. It was discovered after a thorough search of the area where 34901 was discovered. Because of allusions to restricted SCP-related information, Agent Redacted sealed the area and contacted the Foundation. The cemetery is surrounded by a black wrought iron fence with a single Gothic-style arched gate. Inside are small memorials to a variety of individuals from around the world and from throughout recorded history and possibly even earlier. The area is apparently maintained through unidentified means, as weed growth and natural erosions are both inhibited within the fence's confines. The epitaphs are brief and vicious, and the inscriber appears to eagerly claim responsibility for the death of each individual. In some cases, the inscriptions are partially spiteful or vindictive, and seem to indicate personal animosity between the inscriber and the individual interrated. An analysis of historical records has been able to confirm the existence of some of the individuals mentioned, often by way of mythology. All substantiated historian personalities appear to have pursued or supposedly attained eternal life, through a diversity of means. This does not appear to include those who are born with immortality, such as Redacted, or races, species, such as the Data Expunged. Among those identified are personages who are obscure, hidden, or only known to be unaging to certain esoteric orders, and whose existence is a secret to common knowledge. This includes Redacted, who are known only in Foundation records. Furthermore, the site references a number of famous figures who apparently passed on much later than historically recorded, such as Christopher Columbus, Sir Francis Bacon, and Albert Heim. Finally, there exists a small group of buried individuals for which we have no important files or mythology. A few have been tentatively identified as rich or eccentric figures of little renown from many places of times. Individuals referenced within 349 appear to have lived an average of 100 years longer than the mean lifespan of their time of death. The longest life recorded at the site, as of writing this, was through careful study and comparison to ancient biblical gospels, theorized to be that of the Wandering Jew, 750 years. Based on this figure's supposed death, it is hypothesized that Data Expunged. Memorial materials and design, body preparation, burial style, religious symbolism, and inscription languages all appear to correspond to the era and culture in which the deceased was born. The oldest site identified is a carved pile of elephant bones, fit together with grooved notches and covered in incomprehensible pictographs and tribal marking. The earliest decipherable inscription is in Sumerian, on a simple rock dedicated to Ku-Aya the Heart-Eater. You've sold your clan into slavery and devoured the flesh of your family and received your reward. The corpses in most of the graves are in states of decay corresponding to their age. Some of the older ones are almost dust. Despite the variety of burial methods, close inspection reveals that the majority, 90%, of the plots show scratch marks on the material that was blocking escape, or signs of attempted tunneling to the surface. Nevertheless, each plot excavated so far has had a corpse or a set of bones afforded to it. The confirmed age of the various plots, the historical accuracy of its allusions, and the demonstrated familiarity of its keeper with classified Foundation knowledge of modern immortals suggests that 349 is not a simple hoax. Containment has been established to facilitate study and to determine if contact can be made with the entities responsible for it. Active intervention of these beings is theorized to have been responsible for Redacted, as well as the demise of SCP-149-D while in Foundation custody during Data Expunged. The latter is one of two unique instances where an entirely preserved body was unearthed. Although the preservation seems to derive from the properties that decrease displayed in life rather than any condition imposed in death, the other instance is the remnants of Calophysosi of Britannica, a little-known mythological figure who could apparently withstand volleys of arrows and direct strikes with swords. In both cases, they were found with extreme terror on their faces, and their mouths were twisted as if screaming. 349 resembles a mundane graveyard and poses no apparent threat to the secrecy of Foundation operations or visitors to the site. Current containment protocols are limited to constant remote surveillance, the maintenance of a physical barrier to prevent casual unauthorized entry, and the assignment of a response team to deal with vandalism or other threats to site integrity. Plans exist to expand the site as necessary to accommodate theorized growth. Hey, Fat. It's Fat Man, not Fat. Oh well, I found a way out over here. It's a little bit of a far walk, but you know, it's better than dealing with whatever the hell that thing is over there. How far of a walk is it? I don't know, probably an hour or so? I think I'd rather take my chances with the whole of death. Don't be a lazy ass. I'll give you my fez if you come with me. Fine, but I've got some entries to finish wrapping up and then I'll be there. Okay, but that hole looks like it's getting worse, so don't take forever. SCP-6144 is a cinnamon tree that causes economic collapse within the American stock market. Cinnamon sticks created from 6144's bark are not anomalous. Paper made from the pulp of cut branches of 6144 display the above-mentioned containment procedures. Every 4 years, an additional step appears on newly made paper from 6144. The additional step is then analyzed by Alpha Containment 6144 and subsequently constructed and added to 6144's containment area. Each new containment procedure has been noted to be more difficult and convoluted to follow as time progresses. The current list of 6144 containment procedures, as dictated by 6144, are as follows. Every 243 minutes, a peanut butter and caviar sandwich on multigrain rye bread must be eaten in front of me by a horse with the surname Eve. Exactly 22.8 meters to the southwest of the horse must be a stage platform. On the second Monday of every month, there will be a theatre performance of the lost 15th century English play Mankind. At the third vertex of the triangle created by the horse and the stage platform must be a 43-year-old man with a bald head wearing overalls reciting Codex Sinaiticus in Latin. 14 meters above the man will be 5 extinct British copper butterflies encased in amber suspended in the air. Looking up at the blocks of amber shall be a level 2B reality bender juggling 15 stones located from terrestrial planets located in the Andromeda Galaxy. 12 centimeters diagonal to the back of the reality bender's head will be a 5.7 meter perfect living clone of the current American president singing the Finnish folk song Sakajavin Polka. At the apex of the parabola that connects the president and the performer's stage will be an albino alligator on its hind legs, tap dancing while chewing cinnamon-scented gum. 15 kilometers above the alligator will be a miniature replica of Site-28, complete with mini researchers, anomalous to existing Site-28 personnel. 112.54 meters below the replica is to be the Sarkic Princeling Zyaldrinolov, contained in a room full of apricot jelly. Any individual who looks at me longer than 14.3 seconds should immediately brush his teeth with liquid jade and rinse his ambrosia pudding. Living entities in a 666 meter radius around me will remove and consume their sigmoid colon if their steps are not exactly 0.26 meters apart. All members of Alpha Containment 6144 are to be sacrificed on a 15 meter by 30 meter altar of pink jasper every year on the 5th of April. 19 times a month, 33.5 individuals will come to me and eat their shoes. They must then smash and eat 0.78 million USD worth of computer graphics cards. Okay, so I know I promised 50 entries in this video, and I intend to finish the other 20 in a part 2. But for now, reality is breaking, and so that brings us to the end of our first SCP reading. What a fun time we've had today. We've had various viruses and epidemics to multiversal threats to entities beyond our human comprehension. Speaking of, I need to get the hell out of this dimension before that giant hole starts spitting random shit and does something bad. So, hopefully I'll make it out alive. If I do, I'll see you all again in a different place. Until then, stay safe. About damn time, man. We have an hour to go. Please don't start talking yet. You know, you seem familiar, fat man. Are you from, like, a game or something? I said shut up. But I'm just curious. I would sooner kill myself than that hole does at this point. Yeah, but I mean, I'm just... Like, shut up.